What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast. You got Chris and Ray. Ray, it's been a really exciting time of year. I mean, we got conference championships completing, right? We know who's in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is a couple weeks away, which is awesome, right? We get to just kind of savor in this moment. But it's also NFL draft season, and the Senior Bowl practices are going on. You can't even go on Twitter anymore without seeing like 3 or 4 highlight plays from the Senior Bowl. Super cool. And it's basically time we start reviewing some film.
Yeah, everyone's rising and everyone is falling at the Senior Bowl at the same time. So just keep that in mind whenever you watch or these Twitter takes and everything else and all these clips. It's like, yeah, someone is going to show an awesome clip of Derek Kyle Kennard, and then they won't show. Someone else will show him getting just dog walked or something, and fit their own agenda. So watch for yourself. We got a few clips of film to show you, not necessarily of Senior Bowl guys, but like you mentioned, Super Bowl is coming up next week. So we have this off week prior to, and it's the Pro Bowl, and they're playing dodgeball, whatever. That's cool. But it's the perfect time now to really dive into draft season. And we've kind of talked at a high level about the top of the draft and team needs and some of the top prospects. But now we can actually move forward into our film breakdowns and really digging deeper into these prospects and see where they land or where we think they should land in the NFL draft and how they could potentially impact your all 22 teams for those of you on the platform, either in a rookie or startup draft upcoming. So with that, that's the best time of year. Super Bowl plus draft. Can't ask for much more.
It's incredible. And I'll give it to you, man. You had a really good idea, which is while we're kind of getting the film together for all these different players that played this year, right? So the film is kind of coming piecemeal and we're getting it in pieces, but we're going through it. We're grinding through it. But there was 2 players that primarily played, they played last year, but this year, maybe they played a few games. But what we know about them is really from past seasons. And that is Will Johnson and Benjamin Morrison. And you were like, hey, those are 2 guys, play the same position, play cornerback. It's, if not our favorite position to review, it's at least top 3. So why don't we start with those 2 guys? And I thought that was a really great idea, right? Give us something to start with. Let's look into some film. And we're going to start with Will Johnson. So Will Johnson, 21 years old. He'll be 22 on draft day, was a 3-year starter at Michigan, played over 1,300 snaps, but he was injured in week 8 of this season. He's 6'2", 202 pounds. He's got 9 career interceptions, 7 career pass breakups, and played almost all of his snaps at outside corner. Very few were done in the slot. He's given up on his career, again, 3 years, 61 catches, 815 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns were from his freshman season. Me personally, I watched the Ohio State film. I watched Alabama. But Ray, which game are you showing us today?
So again, to the main point here, right? We're looking at some 23 stuff since that's when he was healthiest, right? Banged up on and off pretty much the majority of 2024. So of course, we're going to take a look at Ohio State and Will Johnson versus Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So shocker, right? But to your point, big corner, 6'2", 200 plus pounds, mostly plays on the outside. Of course, we got some to show you in the slot as well. But for the most part, based on that profile, you can already see sort of a bigger physical type of corner. And he's going up against a bigger physical, really all-around type receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So as we get into it, let's just focus on the top of your screen here. So you have Marvin Harrison Jr. out wide at the top of your screen up against Will Johnson. And again, as sort of a precursor to all of this, we don't just show a highlight. We don't put something in a clip here just to say, oh, wow, what a great play. Look at that. What we do is we notice trends when we watch these players on film, and then we take examples and bring that to you to highlight some of those trends that we see of both strengths and weaknesses. So this first play, you might already recognize it if you're familiar with these 2 teams. It's not here because it's a highlight. We're going to talk about it some more. So letting it run again, top of your screen here, off man. You see the patience right here. Staying square. His posture is already downhill. Quarterback is releasing the ball. He's already making a break along with Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So he's going to go ahead, cut him off, interception, few yards, big play, right? I believe this was a 3rd down. And this is really Will Johnson to a T. He's very, very just aggressive downhill. when the receiver breaks, he's got great posture. He's already squatting. You notice the safety over the top here. So he knows he has help deep. And on a third and medium play like this, he's going to be breaking on the ball on this first move. And he just beats Marvin Harrison Jr. to the point of contact and makes a play on the ball. That's Will Johnson to a T. Big physical. In the short game, you got to bring your lunch pail, because if not, he's going to make you pay for it. And that's exactly what he did here. So big play for Michigan. Obviously, they went on to win this game along with every other game that season. And this is a big reason why. So again, just trend one, physical, downhill type of player, aggressive, can make you pay if you're late over the middle in the short game.
Perfect. This is a play that when I was in school, we called it like red coverage, right? Because the left side of the field, the bottom of your screen is showing man-to-man, and it is going to be man-to-man. The safety is going to go to one side, right? When you're playing against a guy like Marvin Harrison, you have to put some extra kind of cushion there to guard a guy like that, which makes sense. Even for the best corners in the league, they'll have to do that with a guy like Marvin Harrison. But Will Johnson is in this great squat technique, right? And he sits back and he's so patient, and you don't see panic. And that is one thing you really see with Will Johnson, is just this great instinct and vision to feel comfortable. He never shows true panic, and he just plays space so well, right? So he's in that squat technique. But another trend, right? Trends. You're talking about trends. He cuts off those in routes as good as anyone I've seen, right? Like he will jump and break the route so quickly and so smoothly that it really is just a testament to his instincts, and also just his way of disguising things, right? Like it's obvious that they thought this was man coverage, and it wasn't, right? He stayed there and he just made a great play. Bad throw by the quarterback, shouldn't have made that throw. He should have recognized that the safety was going over top and Johnson would be sitting there. He doesn't. He makes a bad throw. And it's just a great play, right? An instinctual play by Will Johnson. So definitely one for the positive side of his book.
So we're going to let it run, and maybe one on the other side of the ledger here. So you talked about Will Johnson primarily on the outside, but when you're the big man on campus, right, you're a projected first-round pick in the secondary at a school like Michigan, you're probably going to travel against the opposing team's best receiver. And in this case, that's what we have here. Marvin Harrison Jr. is now in the slot. You see Will Johnson focus on the slot here in the middle of your screen. He is lined up in the slot. And in this case, everything we've talked about kind of fits the profile of an outside corner, right? Big, physical, downhill, can make you pay on some late throws. Here, lined up in the slot, again, against Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So we're just going to let this run, and gives up the slot fade here, and we're going to talk about it some more. So again, Marvin Harrison Jr. just kind of eats up his cushion. There was a slight stutter there that I think got Will Johnson a little flat-footed. And then on the transition here, he's trying to now, again, just kind of cut Marvin Harrison Jr. off, but his slide is not the best here. Kind of misses, gets beat, and doesn't really have the recovery speed to catch up. And you're going to see this here from the other angle. We'll pause at a certain point here. But again, right here, ball's in the air. Not a ton of separation, but that's enough separation in the NFL. He's not in phase. Back to the ball, separation between him and the receiver, not where you want to be as a corner. And so when you're in the slot like that and you have much more space that you have to deal with between you and the receiver, and he's got a two-way go, and the safety help isn't quite as effective when you have leverage totally to one side of the field or the other, he doesn't necessarily have that fleet of foot catch-up speed in that space to really make up for, again, a missed jam or getting your cushion eaten up. That's not his game per se. He is more the physical side. And so when you get him in space and you can get him out of phase, his recovery is not the best, as you see here. Granted, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. and the strides and everything else is great, but you're in the NFL now. This is what you're gonna see. So with his profile, you would imagine he's not necessarily going to be lined up often in the slot, but in this day and age, these offensive coordinators are great. They're going to move their guys around, get them off the line of scrimmage so they don't have to deal with a lot of that muscling up at the line of scrimmage and press in their routes. And Will Johnson's going to have to be able to react and adjust to that and play in space at the next level. So put this on the other side of the ledger here of what necessarily he is not as a player, and he's not necessarily that slot player who's going to deal with a lot of space or necessarily have the catch-up speed, the deep catch-up recovery speed against some of the best receivers in the NFL in those instances.
Yeah, the offense does three things really well on this play. You touched on one, which is that Marvin Harrison kind of doesn't indicate to him which way he's going, right? If he's going in or out, so it leaves Will Johnson flat-footed. The second is Harrison doesn't give him eyes until the very end of this play, which makes it very hard for Will Johnson to react to the ball in the air and actually have a chance of making a play on it, right? So again, another thing. Third is the quarterback puts this ball in an absolutely perfect place where the safety has no shot of coming over and getting it. And the corner, again, just doesn't have a real opportunity to make a play on it because it's backside shoulder of the receiver. So they did those three things really well on this play, and it's kind of a recipe for disaster for Will Johnson. But on top of that, I think one of the things that separates Will Johnson, and I start to question if he is in that top tier of cornerbacks when we talk about the kind of like the all-22 era of guys we've reviewed, is his kind of lack of some physicality in route, right? Like, can he get into press coverage, actually get his hands on a guy and impact the route that the receiver's running? You mentioned it here, right? He's left a little flat-footed, but sometimes that's okay if you can at least get a hand on the receiver and move him off of his route, right? Marvin Harrison doesn't get moved off at all on this play, right? He is free to go where he wants to go, and he does just that and gets a great opportunity to catch this ball. Will Johnson, one thing I like about it is, again, he doesn't panic. He's very instinctual. And while he's not in perfect position and there is some separation, he's within range of making, the quarterback has to make a perfect throw. Harrison has to do a great job of not selling the eyes. So like all of those things had to happen for this to be a positive play for the offense, but there wasn't really a possibility because of how well Will Johnson recovers for it to be kind of like a game-changing play, a touchdown. Yes, it's a 20-yard, 30-yard catch or whatever it was, but it's not a touchdown play, right? So I give Johnson a lot of credit for that, but I want to see the physicality. I want to see the use of the hands. I want to see him bumping guys. I want to see him moving people off their routes, getting them uncomfortable in space, right? He's so comfortable in space, make the other guy uncomfortable. So I think you're right. This is a separator. This goes on the left side of the ledger for Johnson, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, and I think here's the concerning thing about that, though, before we move on to the next play, is when you talk about that physicality at the top of this route, for example, it's not necessarily a matter of strength. It's the feet, the foot quickness to get in position to square up and actually make contact and disrupt Harrison's route. His slide is just not quick enough, and Harrison's able to get to his outside quicker than Johnson can cut him off. And so it's not necessarily a strength thing so much as it's a quickness or athleticism type of deal. And again, it's Marvin Harrison Jr., but this is the NFL. You're going to have guys like this who are shifty and can beat you to the outside if you're not quick enough. So if you're not perfect with your technique, he doesn't necessarily have the makeup speed or quickness to adjust. And that's what we saw here. So maybe even a bit more concerning, but to your point, if the quarterback throws that to the inside, Johnson is in decent enough position to perhaps disrupt the throw. So it's not terrible. He wasn't toasted on this play. It's a good throw, great catch, and okay coverage, which is what, okay coverage isn't going to defend that in the NFL. So it does have to be better, but again, not necessarily his profile. I forgot this view here. Yeah, we'll just watch him just give up another catch one more time, right? I'm sure he loves that. So an instance here, again, outside, bottom of your screen here, back at outside corner against, you guessed it, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now here, I talked about in the previous play, he kind of allowed his cushion to be eaten up a bit, right? The receiver was able to get on his toes and was able to then break to the outside and get past his hip. Right here, he does a great job, again, maintaining his depth, not getting his cushion eaten up. Can't see it here. Vision's cut off, but at this point, the quarterback is getting ready to throw the ball. So knowing that you have a flat defender underneath here and a hook to curl defender over the middle, he's able to just have to worry about that vertical route here. He's not necessarily going to bite or be worried about anything as far as a comeback underneath to the inside or the outside because of the underneath help. So he's going to go ahead and just make sure that he can cut off Harrison Jr. vertically. And that's exactly what he does here. There is no play to be made by the receiver or the quarterback in this instance. because he's able to just stand his ground when he just has to worry about either a vertical route or an out route or an in route, as we'll see a bit later on. He does a great job holding his ground and his leverage on certain plays when he has help either to the inside, outside, or out deep. He's able to hold his ground very well. So seems like a ho-hum, just kind of incompletion here, but just kind of goes to the overall point of his discipline in coverage. And again, when he just has to worry about taking away one aspect of a receiver's game, he can do that.
Yeah, he does just a fantastic job positioning himself. And that's something we see consistently, right? Like he knows, again, he's instinctual in space. He knows how to get to his points and he knows where he has help. He's very intelligent like that. I also think like typically he's very good with his form and he's a very high effort player. This play did concern me a little bit just because he's a little high the entire time. He's just a little bit too high for me, right? I understand you're in zone. You don't have to be kind of like, perfect reaction time. But right here, he's a little high. He's kind of like his feet are a little too wide. He's not really having sound technique. But again, he knows where his strengths are. He knows where he's supposed to be. He knows where he has help. So there's really no concern on this play. Quarterback probably should have thrown the underneath, but I understand you have to take a certain amount of risks during a game. So in this situation, he tries to test them. Again, just a good job all around by Michigan defense and Will Johnson in general.
I'll say one more thing here too that just came to me, but you mentioned the technique in the pedal, and yes, he's high, but I do like with the ball in the air, once he sees the ball is released, he finds the receiver, gets chest to chest, is still at this point looking back for the ball also. Kind of hard to see. The Michigan film quality here is kind of ass, but we deal with what we can work with, right? But he gets chest to chest with the receiver while locating the ball and cutting off his route. So in that sense, when the ball is in the air, I love his technique here, getting chest to chest, cutting him off, finding the ball. No chance for an interference because of how well he played it once the ball was in the air.
I agree with that. I would have liked to see him maybe a little bit more play receiver instead of DB on this play, because it is kind of at this point, right? It's kind of it's a 50-50 ball with you, and you're now the receiver too. So while I agree with you, it was great he cut off the receiver. He made sure that he knew where he was, right? Because there's a chance, did Marvin Harrison just run by me and now I have to tackle him? That's probably running through his head a little bit here. But there is also the opportunity to make a play. It was an overthrown ball, so I don't think it would have mattered either way. But yeah, I agree.
You play receiver against Marvin Harrison Jr. Let me know how that works out. So going back to another trend, a second clip here that goes to it or speaks to it. Again, you guessed it, Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Will Johnson at the bottom of the screen here, lined up towards the line of scrimmage here. And I'll just let it run and then talk you through it after. So I'm just going to let it run one time here. Seemingly ho-hum play, right? Ball goes to the other side of the field here. But what I like about this, he's patient at the line of scrimmage and he throws that inside hand here and he quote unquote misses with that inside hand. But you'll notice here, there's bracket coverage from the safety on Marvin Harrison to the inside. So all, again, Will Johnson is worried about is getting beat to the outside. He can't let that happen. He's got his inside help, so he just has to hold his ground to the outside. So if Marvin Harrison Jr. takes an outside release here and Will Johnson throws that inside hand, he can ride him to that sideline and kind of hold his leverage. But Harrison takes an inside release. He's running an inside route. So that's fine. He's going to let him take the inside. And if he's in position, stays in position to, if there is an outbreaking route, Johnson's got the leverage. There's no chance that's going to be completed. If he has a comeback to the football here, Johnson's in position underneath here. So he just stays disciplined in keeping his leverage. Okay. If in this instance, he gets beat, to the outside and loses his leverage, that's when you can potentially give up a touchdown. If this was a fade route and Will Johnson were to throw that outside hand instead of the inside hand and get beat to the outside, that's a lot tougher for this safety to come help over the top here. And that's when you can get in trouble. So the discipline that Will Johnson Jr. plays with when it comes to leverage and knowing he has to really cut off just one aspect of a receiver's route, he can do that very well. And that bodes well to grading well in the NFL and on the All-22 platform. So seemingly ho-hum play, no stats recorded here, but I like how he stays disciplined with his leverage. And when you're going up against, a Marvin Harrison Jr. in a big game like this, sometimes that can get away from you. The moment can get kind of big and you just kind of lose sight of your technique. He stays disciplined here, and I like to see that from him.
So the first step is the best step. that you see on the film on this play. He takes that outside step, right, to make sure that Harrison can get that lane. That's textbook right there. I agree with you. He throws the right. It's fine, like that he didn't give his left. That's great. Only thing I'll say is like giving free releases when you're in cover two puts a little strain on your safety, right? And they're not going to be your best friend if you do that too often. But again, I don't think Will Johnson's strength is lining up tight. I don't. Every time I saw him in space, he looked so much more comfortable. But saying that, he does do a really nice job of at least closing the space behind him, because he's likely he's either in like a fourth zone or he's in a cover two, but keeps, getting depth, which is what you're supposed to do if you don't have an immediate attack. So he does a good job of that, right? So like while I'm mad at him for not getting more of a hand on him, and again, slowing him down, getting to the safety, he at least gets that depth that he needs to get to at least make sure that the safety doesn't have to run to the sideline if Marvin Harrison gets behind him. So again, it's a plus at the end of the day, but it's not a perfect play.
Yeah, +1, not +2. Another matchup we like to see, right? Sticking with 2023 here, Rome Odunze, another high-profile name from the last class. Will Johnson went up against him too in the national championship game. And so we're going to see him now lined up at the top of the screen here. Goal line situation. So to your point, Chris, tight to the line of scrimmage, more physical. The action happens a lot quicker here. We're going to let this one run and then run it back. You could probably point out the takeaway here pretty easily. And yeah, there's the flag. So again, when it comes to the quickness that we talk about with Will Johnson, not necessarily being the fleetest of foot, this is kind of what we talk about here. A whip route at this area of the field is hard for anybody. But again, the sudden change of direction really struggles with that here, even in close quarters, and can get a bit grabby. And again, being grabby, like on the offensive line with holding calls, a lot of the times because of your feet, not necessarily your hands. That's the case here with Will Johnson. So from this angle, you'll just kind of see it again. Was completely out of sorts here, just completely out of phase on the break. Just grabs, and if you're going to give up a touchdown, it's quote unquote smart to take the penalty instead. But you're so close to the goal line anyway at this point. It's just a bad play. You want to see some more of that quickness there, to where he can deal with some sudden change of direction. Yes, this is a tough assignment for any corner, a tough route to cover. But I need you to be a bit better than that. I need you to stay more square here and just kind of try to control the action and not grab. When you get out of sorts like this, you're going to run into some problems. And again, to me, this goes back to, yes, his adeptness or perhaps lack thereof at the line, but also just the general foot quickness. Even if he does improve with his hands here and gets better position, perhaps with that outside hand to control the action, I don't think he necessarily has the foot quickness to stay with the receiver on the outbreak either way.
I honestly hate the safety play on this. It kind of bothers me, just like seeing the positions of the safety and how they play this. The safety on his side does a decent job. Like he's at least reacting to the inside, and he's going to try to also get back when he makes that move. I don't think Johnson feels comfortable with the call. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that's part of this, but it also, like, the knock that I kind of go back to. I know, you mentioned before, he is big, he's strong, all those things. I kind of think he has a problem with his strength a little bit. I kind of think that's part of this, right? Like his hand usage, his punch, I don't think he feels super strong about it. You're also talking about Rome, who's a big, tough receiver. You're talking about Harrison, who's a big, tough receiver. These are really tough matchups for a guy that might not necessarily trust his own strength, and does trust his athleticism, right? So really tough situation for him to be in. And again, I would have rather had him play kind of like more of an outside coverage on this. Let the safety be the inside coverage, bracket it, right? You have the other safety that looks like he just does absolutely nothing on this play, and it kind of, again, drives me insane. I think it could have been defended a lot better. I understand you have that free blitzer coming up the middle that was hesitating. You got to do more with this as a defense, but that's another conversation.
I like it. Maybe they didn't know the plays that were coming this time around. But in any event, so again, similar situation here near the goal line, bottom of your screen. Here's one thing I do like, and kind of goes back to the overall discipline, is his communication overall. So I'm going to run some mesh here, some crossers. You're going to see him point it out and then go ahead and turn and kind of not chase and either run into a defender or run into a receiver, get a penalty. You let it run. You see him call it out to the backside safety there, and then turn back in and try to disrupt the other crosser. But he's got help here. Overall, the entire Michigan secondary on this play, I think, does a really good job of communicating and passing off these routes. And I think that's a strength in Will Johnson's game. Just overall, just smarts and discipline and communication, because a lot can happen in between, the whistles here. I think he does a great job. Again, yes, it's not necessarily his responsibility. While yes, he passed it off and kind of noted the other crosser coming from the wide side of the field here. It's not his job to then pick that up the whole way. That's number 9 here at the bottom of your screen. But a lot of times in crossers like this, you'll have a receiver kind of take the short middle there to hold a defender and allow a cross to be completed over the top here. That's not necessarily the case here, but Will Johnson would be in position for that if that were the case. I mean, so were a couple other Michigan defenders here in that hook curl zone. So overall, really well played by Michigan, but you could tell pretty well coached here and good communication all around.
Couldn't agree more. I think the only other thing I'll just comment on, because I think he touched on everything, is his ability to also slow down the receiver coming across the other way, right? Because he gets in the way. He does get it, even if it's a step, right? There's no pass interference, there's no holding, but he slows him down and makes the receiver have to go maybe a little flatter than he would have liked to, considering the other guy was there. So again, it's just all around a good play for Will Johnson.
And I think this is the last one. Might have 2 more after this, but another play here again, just sticking to it, just rounding out his game. At least he's putting his, sticking his nose in there, right? It's nothing fantastic, but we're going to see some more film a little bit later on in this episode where this might not necessarily be the case for some other players. Again, just kind of making sure that he attacks that outside shoulder of the receiver here. And then as the running back cuts back inside, just sticks his nose in there, adds another body to the mix. They kind of get driven for a little bit here, but such is the life of a cornerback.
He does a great job in that play, coming up and playing the run, like you said, right? He does not he tries to be physical. He definitely puts in the effort, and in run plays, and also when he's defending the sticks, I constantly saw him do a really nice job of that. One thing that we didn't see a play on that I'll just kind of point out. One of the instinctual things I loved about him in space is his ability to know where the sticks are and basically always make sure that he does not let the receiver get there, right? He'll give it up front, and he trusts his athleticism to step up and make a play on the ball and make sure that he gets the guy short of the first down. I saw that consistently. So it's plays like that. It's plays like this where he comes up on run plays where you do like the physicality and you do like what he tries to at least be doing. Again, I never saw effort concerns from a guy like him. I never saw that on film. He's always going and putting his best hat forward. He's always giving his all on every play. I remember watching Stingley, where Stingley was a fantastic DB, great in coverage, but from play to play, he might just not care. And that was always concerning to me. That's not the case for Will Johnson. I do think that he cares, and I see that effort on plays like this.
So that's all we got for Will Johnson. We can go on to the next. You want to chat about Will some more?
Yeah, why don't we summarize it a little bit? I mean, the overall sense that I got is this is a extremely talented corner with some incredible skills, right? He's a great man-to-man corner. He can play zone as well. He prefers to be a deep kind of player. He doesn't like that hard-nosed press coverage corner that maybe the next guy is gonna play a little bit more of. And he's a guy I really like, and he's a guy that I would definitely draft. He's a guy that typically I like when we're reviewing film. The speed is definitely going to be a concern, right? The lack of maybe plus physicality is going to be a concern for me, but I think he makes up for that with effort. The injuries, right? We talked about that this is a guy that missed a lot of the season with injuries, but he actually has a decent laundry list of injuries on his resume. I think this year was shoulder and maybe ankle, but there was also something about his toe. So there was a bunch of different injuries on this guy's list already that, I get shutting it down for the year and getting healthy before you enter the NFL. I don't know how it's going to affect his draft stock though, right? This is a guy that very frequently was being talked about as the, a top 15 pick, if not higher, and the number 2 corner in the draft. That's what I've heard, right? I think another concern I have besides just the injuries is when we were talking about this guy as a true freshman, maybe not to the same level as Jeremiah Smith, right? That's a different level, but people were talking about if this guy entered the NFL after his freshman year, he would have been the first corner taken and he would have been the best corner in the draft, yada, yada, yada. It didn't really necessarily get better from there, right? Yes, he didn't give up more touchdowns or big plays. He was able to reduce that from his freshman year, but his grading just on each play didn't necessarily improve, which I think is a little bit of a concern for me, right? I want to see that you can get better, but it's also how cornerback is. Cornerback is that position where you're going to have a really great year and the next year you might suck. And then the next year you might be great again. So there is that volatility. I trust a guy like this, though. If I was saying, I'll pose the question to you, but for me, if I was putting him into last year's cornerback group, I don't think there's any doubt that he would have been cornerback 1 for me.
I think he's in that mix. I think he's right around where those guys were. Maybe a little bit better, but I think with him, it's all about fit, because I don't think he's in the NFL, the type of corner that you could just week after week just line up against their best player and you could leave him in man coverage and go from there. He doesn't change the geometry for you because he lacks some of that high-end recovery speed, some of those high-end speed traits that allow the best corners to really run all over the field with some of these players, right? That's not necessarily his game. I think fit is important. You mentioned the discipline and again, being able to play deep third and be very comfortable. Thinking of that old kind of Seattle cover 3 Legion of Boom type of coverage where you can be big, you can be long, and as long as you hold your ground downfield, you're doing your part in a fantastic sort of defensive scheme. That's where Will Johnson could fit in, a place like that where he can excel. I don't think press man, bump and run 35, 40 times a game is necessarily for him to just run around with the top receiver on the opposing team play after play. I don't think that's well for him because I don't see the quickness and fleetness of foot, if fleetness is a word, that is needed to complete that assignment week after week in the NFL. I like how he's downhill. I like how he's disciplined. He holds his ground and his leverage, whatever that assignment is, whether he has to protect the inside, protect the outside, or not get beat deep. He does a great job at that, like you mentioned. And tackling, not the greatest, but he sticks his nose in there. It's perfectly fine and adequate, probably even above baseline for corners. So I just think it's all about fit and your expectation. All that to me screams someone in the late teens-ish of a given draft in the first round. And I think that's where he ultimately ends up, which, I mean, we talked about, Terrion Arnold. We liked Kool-Aid coming in as well. And Quinyon Mitchell had all the tools, just a matter of if he hit them, and seems to be doing pretty darn well over there in Philly. So I think he would have just been right in the mix. I don't think he's clearly above those other guys in the class, but I wouldn't necessarily put him clearly below them either if you're looking at last year's corner class.
So I think Quinyon definitely is a benefactor of the defense that he got put into. And I think Cooper
Also
DeJean is as well. So I think that's like, you have to separate it and look at them just as the prospects they were. And I would have had Will Johnson above them. I would have him, again, just talking off the cuff because I haven't watched everybody in this year's draft, but I think I could realistically see a case where if the injuries check out that he is actually okay, I see him as a top 15 pick in this draft. I really do. I think he is that type of player. There's two types of corner. Like when you're talking about the best corners in drafts, there's the elites, which is like the Surtain and the Sauces, where, like you're saying, you could put them in any system and they're going to ball out. I do not think he is that level of corner. I think he's the one step after that, which is he can be a number 1 corner on the right team. I don't think this is a guy you draft like a Kool-Aid or like a Cooper DeJean or guys like that, where you're like, this is probably going to be my number 2 corner. I think that is why Quinyon Mitchell also kind of got the opportunity to be corner 1 off the board, is because while, like you're saying, right, like we weren't sure if he was going to hit on all of his traits, and it seems like he is, but like he had the traits to be a number 1 corner. The other guys maybe like were better suited as like a really high end cornerback 2. Will Johnson is a cornerback 1 to me. It's just maybe not on every team.
Yeah, totally fair. Slight concern to what you said earlier, though. 5-star recruit kind of comes in, starts right away, developed some, but you didn't see like a steep progression. Is he close to being maxed out? I don't necessarily think so, because I think, to our points, he can get, at the very least, he can get stronger, if not, quicker, and kind of change his profile that way. So some concern there, but you're right. In the right system, he can absolutely be your top corner option for you. He's just not no-brainer, no matter what, change the geometry of any defense that he's in.
Yeah. And I think when I was looking at the film, a guy that I would say maybe like, just for comparison's sake, and again, it's not like I think Christian Gonzalez was a much faster player and a little bit, again, like recovery speed wise was fantastic, very much like a man corner. But I saw a lot of similarities in like their strengths, which is like, hey, like I'm going to be kind of like man to man corner. I want to play off. I don't want to play with my body. I don't want to be that kind of a corner. And it's also like, again, can be a number one corner on the right team, but probably not tailor made for every team. So like, and I think Christian Gonzalez went almost like around 15. I think that was like around where he got drafted by the Patriots. So I think that's like a pretty good example of where I see this guy and how I would see him get drafted as well.
I think he might have went a little higher than that, but I'm also irrationally high on Christian Gonzalez, so that could just be my own brain
Could be
playing tricks on me. Yeah, 17. You're right. Good call.
Yeah. That's kind of the range I see him in. But all right, let's go to Benjamin Morrison.
Yeah, let's
actually, before we jump in, I'll give the background, right? 20 years old. This is a 20-year-old prospect. He'll be 21 on draft day, but he's a 3-year starter at Notre Dame and played over 1,500 snaps. Injured in week 7 of this year. He is 6'9", 190 pounds, so a little bit slighter. 9 career interceptions, 12 career pass breakups. Almost all of his snaps again at outside corner. On the career, 59 catches for 700 yards and 4 TDs. So very low numbers against him in over 1,500 snaps. So I really like that. Let me know when you're ready to dive into this.
I'm ready. You said 6'9", 190. He's not Kevin Durant. He's 6 foot 190. Yeah, he's not that slight.
That'd be sick. Kevin Durant at corner would be wild.
That'd be fun. That'd be a fun watch. But
him versus
we're almost there.
McConkey.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. I think I'm close enough here to. Here we go. Looking okay here. Just gotta.
Yeah, we're looking good.
Hone in on my. There you go. All right, so Benjamin Morrison, look at that. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. yet again. We're looking at 2023 tape here. Did you mention, I think Ben Morrison, his injury was to the hip, which a little dicey, I think. Was he the hip or the knee, actually? I don't recall
He is
offhand.
The hip.
He's the hip, yeah. It's kind of dicey for a cornerback, in my opinion. Again, combine is where you'll get the medicals and all that fun stuff, but off the rip, I don't really like cornerbacks with hip injuries, but we'll see what the tape tells us here. And I think we have a couple less clips than we did of Will Johnson to share here, but I think enough to give us a decent idea of the player and who he is. So I'm just going to let this one run here. Again, as you can imagine, bottom of the screen here, lined up against Marvin Harrison Jr. This is 2023, Notre Dame versus Ohio State. And so just letting it run. Might not be exactly what you want to see here. So we kind of ended Will Johnson's segment there talking about how he doesn't mind sticking his nose in there. Might not be the most physical tackler or what have you, but he sticks his nose in there. Here, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. You've been getting driven. This is 8 yards off of where the end of the play was, and you're still being just ridden out. You need to be better than this in the NFL here. Number 20 right over here. So that's not what I want to see from a high draft pick at cornerback. Tackling still does matter. It's not all about the coverage here. Bottom of your screen. Actually, no. What do you have to say about that? I can't imagine it's much different, but please.
It's a little different because I mean, I think if I am a coach of Notre Dame's defense and we're playing Ohio State and Marvin Harrison is across from me, I'm saying you don't care about anything else. Like your job is to make sure Marvin Harrison does not catch the football. And at times, I think that's warranted, and only certain players, but at times I think that's warranted. But I agree with you that at this point, right there, when he's at about the 30-yard line, he knows that it's a run play, and Marvin Harrison tries to lock onto him. At that point, you need to change your mindset and start attacking the football, and he gets absolutely kind of embarrassed, right? Harrison just keeps blocking him. At one point, he's almost out of bounds. Can't have that happen. I agree with you. But I'm also okay with him taking the opportunity at first to really ensure that it's not a pass play. And I think that's probably a coaching decision that happened there.
Okay. Let's roll it again. Bottom of the screen here. So not against Marvin Harrison Jr. here, just bottom of the screen here, playing towards the boundary side, number 20, and we'll let it run again. And this here, I don't like that either. Chris. Tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not sure he's earning it anymore. So now this play, he's not locked up just in a sort of fist fight with a receiver where you could say, okay, Marvin Harrison, 6'4", 200 plus, big physical guy. maybe you just kind of lost it, right? You just lost the battle there. He kept driving you out. Fine. But at this point here, I need you to be able to make a tackle here and not give up an extra 6 yards after contact here. And he just gets stiff armed into the ground. I need more physicality from my corners here in open space because, hey man, if you're manned up and there's a cover 0, a cover 1, and you give up a slant over the middle and you can't make that tackle after you give up the catch, that's major yak. So to me, I need to see a lot more physicality. You say he's only 20 years old, so at this point maybe he's 19, but that this is not going to cut it. This effort's not going to cut it in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Powers is going to do you worse.
Let's talk about the coverage first because, it looks like he's in a quarter concept. He, does a decent job, but I would have actually liked to see a little bit more hesitation, right? Because he kind of bails back and the linebacker hasn't disengaged from the inside receiver yet. So there was no real handoff done. So he leaves that receiver a second too long, which allows that pass to come in. If you would have sat right there for a second longer, like you have the safety on the inside and the safety's coming down already. So I don't think you have to really rush to that spot. What you're really worried about in this situation is him going above you, right? Which at this point there's no threat of. And what you would typically do in that is you would disguise yourself underneath anyway so that you can pop back and make a play on the football. He doesn't do that here. And like you said, he's probably 19. Maybe he doesn't know that yet. It's fine. Okay. After the catch is made, I agree with you. I think he does a decent job at least squaring up, but you want to just come through, right? Like you're a college football player playing at Notre Dame. You need to come up and you need to really wrap up and make a tackle. And you can't get stiff-armed by a receiver that looks like he's just about your size, right? Especially to the ground. I'm sure like other guys were kind of giving him crap about that in the locker room later because it is a little embarrassing for that to happen to you. But at the end of the day, you see there he doesn't give up. There's more effort. He does try to get an ankle. I think he does kind of trip him up. I don't know if he got credited for the tackle, but he at least slowed it down enough where other guys were able to come in and kind of finish it off. I'm a little hesitant to be so critical of a 19-year-old missing a play like this, but at the same time, yeah, like it probably didn't look too good in the locker room. And as a coach, I want to see more physicality.
Hey, stopped his feet. You see right here, he breaks down and he's pitter-pattering here. That's not how you want to, you're not tackling through the receiver, as you said, and that allows you to get stiff-armed. When you break down here with all that space in between you, that's going to happen.
Yeah, his head should have been through the guy's seatbelt for sure.
Look, he's already dropping his hips right here. There's still 3 yards to go. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
So top of your screen here, lined up. Again, you can already see it's some sort of banjo or bracket coverage. He's got some outside leverage. And so we're just going to let it run. And again, now I start to get concerned. I don't know what the saying is. 1 is something, 2 is a trend, and 3 is a party. I don't know. But they're having fun going after him in the open field here. And again, just tackling fundamentals here. You're going to, head down. He's just kind of diving low. He's not seeing what he's hitting. And there you go. Gives up a first down. This seems to be a long yardage situation. This is third and 8. And he had him stopped at, the 31, 2.5, 3 yards to go and just missed the tackle. That's going to that play is going to be tougher in the NFL than it was even against Ohio State. So yeah, head down, just not good posture. And now I'm getting concerned because do I have someone who's athletic and can cover, but if they give up a catch, which is inevitable, it's a crapshoot if they're going to be able to bring the ball carrier down to the ground, because that limits what I can do too as defensive coordinator. Because now I'm concerned about leaving him one-on-one in space and on an island, because if his coverage ability is island worthy, but I can't count on him to make the tackle when he inevitably gives up a catch, I'm scared. I'm play calling now, with some risk aversion, and I'd rather not have to do that.
Funny that you picked the last 2 plays he's in off coverage, which is something that I noted I would never draft him to do. Like I'm really not drafting him to play in space. Very different than Johnson in that aspect. I don't think that's a strength of his at all for Morrison, is playing in space. Anytime he's off, he looks a little lost, and I think he's uncomfortable. And yes, like coming down and having to make a play in space on a running back, is not the way that I would use Ben Johnson or want him to be used to utilize his strength. So yeah, I'm definitely concerned. And definitely, again, it kind of like minimizes the impact that you have when you're drafting a player like this and what you can utilize him for. So definitely concerning for me. Also, I mean, it's an Ohio State running back. I think both of them are going to be like potential first round, at least early second round picks. So like this is like a legit NFL running back that he's going against at this moment.
I knew someone was going to say that. I don't think this is Henderson though. I think this is this might be Judkins? Evan Pryor.
Okay.
No, because remember this is 23, so I think this might be Evan Pryor or something, number 19.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was another thing I actually wrote down. I was like, this is not Travion.
Okay. All right. Fair. But yeah, that's pretty gross. One positive, he stays outside and forces him to go inside. I mean, very little small positive on the play. Yeah. Gets him back to, the guys there to protect him.
You'll take what you can get at this point, right?
This is him on the bottom of the screen?
Yep, bottom of the screen here now. Next play.
This is what we want to see, though. This is how you want to line him up.
Yes. Against Marvin Harrison Jr., though. So, again, this is good on good. This is grown man against, 19-year-old Ben Morrison, I think. And, yep, good patience here. That's textbook. So to your point, this is what I think we want to see. I think the kids do all the seatbelt celebrations nowadays, but I love the patience here as we run it back. Doesn't get eaten up, still maintains good cushion here, pretty good posture here, staying square. Doesn't bite too hard on the outside when Harrison sticks his foot in the ground here. Look at that slide. That is beautiful. He hasn't even turned his hips yet. He hasn't even thrown a hand yet. He's just mirrored him so well. That's teaching tape for defense in football or basketball for that matter. I mean, that's perfect. And then once he makes the break, slide again, and then just is quick enough to disrupt the play at the catch point. That is textbook. Just pure patience here. Again, the slide and then the drive. To me, that's beautiful. I'm not sure if we have the other view of this or not. Nope, I don't think so. So yeah, to your point, very patient. I love it here. He's just so comfortable, reads the break, slides, and then makes a play on the ball. That's textbook stuff right there.
Dude, so like that's what I was trying to get at, is like you're showing exactly how I would not use him in the previous plays, but this is what separates him, right? And makes this kid really, really special. Because if you can line a guy out wide in the field side, right? Like the wide side of the field, and have him lock up against a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. and that squat technique and the way he just slowly climbs but doesn't lose any of his balance and keeps his balance in front of him, and then steps up and instinctually makes a play on the ball like that, it's incredible. One knock, like when he turns, he should probably have that right hand on Harrison's hip to stay really tight with him. But again, he makes such a good play on the ball. It's really hard to knock him for not doing that. This is how this kid should be used all the time. All the time, this is how this kid should be used. One other thing I kind of had in my notes is just that his eyes are really good too. Like if you see on this play, right, like his eyes are the perfect place, right? He's not looking high. He's probably like right now he's looking right at the hips. He knows where Harrison's actually going to be going. He's not distracted by the feet. And then once the ball's in the air, his eyes go perfectly to where the spot of the ball is going to be and gets his hands there. Like it's fantastic. But he uses his eyes really well on other plays too. I'm not sure if you're going to have any, but something I definitely noticed.
Yep. Good heady player for a 19-year-old. Now 20. So press coverage again. Now you got some trips here and up against, you guessed it, Marvin Harrison Jr. We just got the arrow pointing right at him because today's the Marvin Harrison Jr. show. Who knew? Talking about two cornerbacks, and it's really just Marvin Harrison Jr. all over again. But to your point here, just another example of him in press, and does a pretty good job, I think, carrying the route and staying with him here. But you're going to notice at the top of the route, the grab right here. And if you'll notice ever so slightly here, there was a lean by Harrison, and Harrison's a big, strong dude. Ben Morrison, likely not so much. So if you get knocked off balance by that strength, he grabs, just kind of instinctively here and gets the penalty. So it's called, I think, to your point, I like this play a lot because this shows sort of the good and the bad side of the ledger in coverage for Morrison. Because in press, again, I think he does a good job. Harrison takes the inside release. There's a lot of traffic here, but he slides really well, mirrors him. He's on that top shoulder, which is good. And then I think this is just a matter of Marvin Harrison Jr. being just too big and strong at this point at the top of the route. Prior to this, everything is fine. Everything is solid. He navigates the traffic well, doesn't get caught up or tripped up at all. But at the break point, Harrison trying to kind of throw an arm here and is just too strong, and Morrison has to grab in order, to prevent himself from losing balance, and he throws the flag. So great feet, great slide, but just play strength needs to be better. Super young player, so perhaps it does get better with time. You think he kind of grows into that, grown man strength, gets some time in the NFL with these grown men. It just happens. But at the top of the route right now, I think the play strength is still something that could be a bit of an issue, especially early on.
Yeah, that's a good point. So again, yeah, this is how I want to play him. I want him tight like that. I want him using his hands. He has great length. We don't really see it on this play. I would have liked him to punch a little bit sooner, right? To get Harrison again uncomfortable. That's a trend of today as well with both guys, is like, can you really make an impact on their routes by making them uncomfortable by using your strength? 190 pounds versus 200 and whatever pound Harrison, maybe not. But I do like the way he set this up. I do think he gets handsy. One of my notes on him is that he grabs a lot, and that's going to be a problem at the next level because they call it every single time when you grab a receiver. So he's going to have to work on that. He's going to have to work at, because that length is so incredibly great, but you need to trust your athletic instincts to be able to catch up with your strength as well. So couple things there. I mean, the penalty, I get it. It's a tough play. It's a really hard player to be playing against, and you got handsy and you made the wrong decision on that, right? But Harrison does push off as well. I think that, that's a missed, it could have been a both ways kind of thing, but you're not going to get that call at the NFL either.
Yeah. Harrison was savvy with it, and that's going to happen. These NFL guys know what they're doing. And to your point, the refs don't care if you have a gold helmet in the NFL. They don't care about that stuff. It's not college anymore. So that will get called, has to get better. I think with him, it is a matter of strength. Whereas with Will Johnson, I think a lot of times it was a matter of just, foot quickness and not being in the right position because of it. I think with Morrison, it's just a matter of strength.
Okay.
That's the last clip we have. So we could talk a bit more about, Ben Morrison and where do you see him overall?
Well, yeah, I mean, the injury thing with the hip is definitely concerning because, like you said, that's vital. Like, if you're a cornerback and your hips are not what they used to be, that's a big problem. So, like, it wholly depends on what that injury ends up being. If they come out and they say that it's significant and it'll impact his career, he moves to, like, being, like, maybe a third or fourth round draft pick, like, legitimately that far back. If it's a non-issue, I think we're talking about a guy that's, maybe I do think he's a first round draft pick. I don't know if he's top 15 like Johnson, probably not, but maybe like top 25. And the guy that he kind of reminded me of, not necessarily in size, and I think Tay Banks was a little bit better than him in the way that he was able to cover in single coverage. But that idea that you want to be aggressive physically reminds me a lot of Tay Banks. And I think Tay Banks went like 25 to 28 or something like that. I think that's a realistic spot for Benjamin Morris. Again, all being dependent on that injury. A couple other things, right, that we talked about. I think the length with his arms is actually special. I think it's a special trait that a lot of cornerbacks wish that they had. And some of the best cornerbacks in the NFL do have. But it led to him being a little too handsy, a little too aggressive. But you showed Marvin Harrison Jr. There was also a lot of plays I watched against Zay Flowers and BC. He played both of those guys really well, really, really well. And as a 19-year-old kid, that's tough. Those are really tough assignments. So positives on him. I think playing the type, it brings me back to the discussion we had about Devin Witherspoon, where that was a guy that was 190 pounds as well, but played super, super physical. And I wasn't sure if it would translate. And I kind of said, this is a really great player, but you're going to have concerns with him playing that style of football at the next level. So far, hasn't really been a huge concern. I think Morrison, it could be a little bit more because I don't know if his man-to-man coverage is the same level as Witherspoon's was. Probably isn't. So it's going to be tough to play as much press coverage as he does at 190 pounds. But I do like the things that he brings to the table.
So to me, this is a situation where some styles make fights, because I actually liked his coverage ability even more than that. But you like Witherspoon more than I did coming out, and Witherspoon is doing really damn well. So kudos to you on that one. Morrison is typically the type of corner that I love. I mean, the landmarks for me, okay, he's around 6 foot, the length. And then when I watch that, just the footwork and the patience that he has in coverage, that's fantastic. Yeah, he has to get stronger. I mean, okay, lift some weights and take some creatine or something and, whatever, get stronger. But all the markers that I look for, athletic, light feet, patient, pretty good feel, especially at the line of scrimmage, and he's got those long arms. That is a fantastic base to work with. But then there's a hip injury and he's not physical. So, yes, all those good things about him. Do the hips hold up? Is he able to do that post hip? Tua is not the same quarterback post hip. Now, Tua's hip injury might have been much worse, but hips are very, very tricky. So that scares the hell out of me. The second thing is he almost had everything you need to where you could draft him in any system and not necessarily be a Jalen Ramsey or a Pat Surtain where you could throw him in any system. He could line up against the number one every single week and be perfectly fine. But the ability to adapt because of his length to play in different systems at a very high level was almost there. But then you watch him and you go, Steelers can't take this guy. They have a behemoth, a freaking condor, Joey Porter Jr. on the other side, big physical corner, right? You take a guy like Morrison, more the fleet of foot, athletic type of corner on the other side there that can kind of run the field. That sounds like a good duo to me. Until you realize Derrick Henry's in that division, and we just watched Benjamin Morrison in run defense and try to tackle not Derrick Henry and really struggle. So that's going to limit him as well. I think there's certain situations now where you have to deploy him correctly, and I'm not sure that I'm comfortable if I'm the Steelers or the Bengals throwing him out there against some of those guys. You're an NFC East team. You need a corner. You think that guy's going to tackle Saquon Barkley in the open field? I have my reservations and concerns. So late first, early second-ish, medicals are going to be the big key here. But I wanted more. I wanted more from Morrison because he was almost there. He checked all the boxes that I like, but the tackling and space and run defense was beyond just, well, he's a corner and you kind of live with that. It was worse than that, to the point where it could be a liability, and that's concerning. And then, the medicals. So to me, late first, early second, and we'll probably know a lot more as things trickle out of the combine and you start to hear the whispers as to whether or not teams are comfortable with him physically or not. He was so close to really being a top half of the first guy for me, and just those knocks were just too big to ignore.
So the fact that he's 19 does make a difference. Or the film we were watching, him at 19, that's a young football player. And you're right. Like, you really hope that he could build from there. And the hip injury makes you not sure of it, right? So it is taking a risk. I will say, you're going to hate me, I like him more than I like Joey Porter Jr. So I think he's a different caliber player. They're very different. But I think I like the fundamental tools that he has and the body type a little bit better. Do I think that he could be a number one corner on a team? I don't think so, because he doesn't have that surefire off coverage ability that you need to have if you're a number one corner in the NFL. But he can be like just about as good as any number two corner in the NFL. And I think about like a team like the Packers, who has a huge need at cornerback and is going to be taking a player later in the first round. That's like exactly what I would want, because Jari is so good at that off coverage and can play basically anybody. And then on the other side, if you had Morrison, and then, like maybe Eric Stokes in the slot, like that's perfect. That's like exactly the diversity that you would want in a DB room. And I think he could be really good in a situation like that. Again, Joey Porter Jr., one of the things that concerns me, I think, about him still to this day is the ability to finish plays. Like, it doesn't show up on film. He's always in position, but is he finishing, right? And now being on that team with TJ Watt and Highsmith and Cam Hayward, like, there's really no excuse from maybe the pass rush isn't really giving him time. Like, no, it's as good of a pass rush as exists in the NFL. You need to do a better job on the second half of the field finishing plays. So Morrison, I have him a little bit higher.
And that's fair. I think to paint the picture for Benjamin Morrison, right? Let's look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in the Super Bowl, right? I wouldn't want Ben Morrison covering AJ Brown. But I'd match him up against Devontae Smith, and I think that's a heck of a matchup. He can kind of match him, with that athleticism and kind of downfield prowess there. That's the style that we're looking for. So yeah, you don't want him against AJ Brown. AJ Brown ruined Emmanuel Forbes' career. Don't put Benjamin Morrison in that situation, but against a guy like Devontae Smith, that's the type of player that Benjamin Morrison can line up against and match up well for you as a defensive coordinator. So
yeah. Totally. And I think, again, like to summarize everybody here, like I think the two corners that we talked about, Will Johnson, I feel very comfortable about drafting him. If the injuries are not as serious as that, because they don't really seem that serious, right? It's a shoulder, you're a cornerback, you should be all right. It's a toe, you're going to be okay. You're going to be
his
okay
injury
from the
report
toe.
should say Michigan was 7-5, and that's why he missed some time. That should.
So
be
I have I almost have no problem taking him top 15 and honestly maybe even higher, right? Like I haven't watched the other cornerbacks yet, so I can't tell you if some of those guys I'm going to like more or not. But at this point in time, I'm like, this is a really good cornerback too in a draft who I like more than every cornerback in last year's draft. And I like him probably just as much as any cornerback in the year before, which was like the Devin Witherspoon, that draft. Like I like him as much as Christian Gonzalez, like any of those guys. I think he can fit into that area of cornerback talent. Like I think he's that level. And that's like cornerback 2 or 3 in this year's draft, which is like, just shows you how special it probably is, considering we all know Travis Hunter is both of our cornerback 1 at this time. So that's really exciting. And then Ben Morrison is, hey, like there could be legitimate concerns about his hip. So I really don't know. This could be like, if you draft him in the first round, total bust and you lose all your money, right? Or it could be you take him in the end of the first round and last time you saw him, he was 19 and now he's 22 and he looks phenomenal, right? Like, and that could be the case as well. And you just got a complete steal. And again, if I'm a team like the Packers where, fundamentally you are, you have depth at most positions and you've drafted pretty well in past years, it's a perfect guy to take a chance on.
I love it. And so for your all 22 drafts, that sounds to me like a someone in the top 20, 25-ish, give or take, cornerback's premium position. So he might get bumped up a bit.
I'm going third, end of the third, early fourth round is when I'm taking a guy like that. So
you're scared. You're scared. You're not looking at his.
It's because of the value of corner in all 22 and how the inconsistency at cornerback and grading will make you hesitant to draft any cornerback high. So like Travis Hunter, if he goes to cornerback, like just because he's the most talented elite prospect in this draft doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the first guy taken, because of the volatility of playing corner. Like you're not going to get 90 grading from a corner every week. Sauce Gardner did it for about 2 years. This year he was like 60s and 70s, right? So like that happens at corner. When you're talking about those elite players that you're taking first and second round, you need to get consistency out of them. So for me, it's like if I have any questions on a cornerback, I'm not taking you until like 3 or 4.
Okay, that's fair. Round 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All right, dude. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X at all22_PFF, and give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and have a great day.